our today's speaker and all the participants to our Weekend Talk program. Center of Excellence and Engineering and Management Analytics, IIT Kharagpur welcomes all the participants to the Weekend Talk program. So the program is conducted under Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of India's independence under Government of India. So we are starting our program with the Sanskrit shloka, Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityurma Amritangamaya, which tells us and inspires us from ignorance to the truth, from darkness to the light, and from death to the immortality. This is our 13th weekend program. The program is on safety engineering, management, and analytics. So myself, Shinjana Chaudhary, research scholar from IIT Kharagpur, along with moderators Shobik Dash and Ashish Garg, research scholars from IIT Kharagpur, and Mrs. Momitra from Tata Steel, would like to welcome our today's dignitaries on the virtual dais. And there is an announcement regarding one conference. COE ACA, IIT Kharagpur, and along with Federation University Australia are jointly organizing the maintenance and intelligent asset management. The conference will be from 12th December to 15th December 2021, and the three key verticals for the conference are asset management and systems, reliability, availability, and maintainability, and maintenance management, and safety engineering and analytics, security, risk management, and human factors. So the important dates for the conference are abstract submission deadline up to 10 September 2021, notification of abstract acceptance up to 20th September 2021, paper submission deadline up to 15th October, and notification of paper acceptance up to 30th October 2021. So we are welcoming all the dignitaries to the virtual dais. Professor J. Maiti, Chairman of COE ACA from IIT Kharagpur. Professor O.B. Krishna, Convener of the Weekend Talk from IIT Kharagpur. And our today's expert speaker, Mr. Anshuman Ghosh, Assistant Vice President, Corporate Safety from Aditya Birla Group. So now I would like to welcome Professor J. Maiti to formally welcome our today's expert speaker. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Shinjana. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh, for accepting our request to deliver expert talk in the Weekend Talk series. And Mr. Ghosh is very well-known personality in the areas of safety, operations, maintenance, leadership. So he is presently Assistant Vice President, Corporate Safety, Aditya Birla Group. Prior to that, he worked in Tata Steel and other organizations, as well as he assumed various positions, particularly leader from technocrat to leadership positions. And Mr. Ghosh will be presenting today on process safety performance monitoring, the role of big data analytics. It's a huge topic, and it's very, very important. And with his vast experience in this particular area, and I'm sure that you will listen many of the important concepts, starting from that the differences in process safety as well as occupational safety, the process safety key performance indicators, why process safety monitoring is important, and how leading and lagging indicators will be created or generated and will be used in process safety monitoring. And essentially, you will also learn that how the big data will be generated in the safety domain and how that big data will play a big role, the role what we will be looking for in safety improvement, safety performance monitoring. And not only that, as he is basically working in industry in this particular area, so we know there are a lot of implementation issues. There will be strategy, there will be support systems, and I am sure that you all will be immensely benefited from the lecture today. Mr. Ghosh will be delivering shortly. Mr. Ghosh, we have no, I cannot express my joy and gratitude for your kind acceptance. And COE, that is Center of Excellence in Safety Engineering Analytics, as I told earlier, it is basically a one of its kind in the world, and our aim is basically, I can say that safety movement in India and abroad. So with this brief introduction as well as brief note, I request Mr. Ghosh to deliver your lecture. And I also welcome all the participants to this weekend talk and your that joining motivating us day in and day out. We are extremely happy with all of you. For Mr. Ghosh, please.
Thank you, Professor Maiti. I mean, it's indeed an honor, first of all, to kind of get this platform to speak, share my experiences, kind of some learnings which I kind of got from the organization and the Institute of IIT Kharagpur. So it's overall a privilege for me to kind of deliver this talk. Particularly on a subject which is very close to my heart. Like though I'm a safety professional and I cover up the entire spectrum of safety management, but process safety in particular is very close to me. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks for joining in. And I mean, it's indeed a pleasure and a privilege for me to speak on this platform. Without wasting any further time, let me start my presentation, which is on the process safety performance monitoring and how big data analytics play a key role in it. Now, having said that, there are certain things which I would cover up in a very detailed way, and certain things which I would like touch upon, particularly with respect to the modeling that is on the that is working on the background of the analytics. However, I have tried to kind of cover up almost every aspect without compromising any organizational data. And like the presentation is entirely mine, and there is no liability on the organization for the presentation I'm going to deliver. So with that disclaimer, let me start. So let me start by asking a question. A question like, are decreasing trend of incident rates enough to rank the organizational safety performance? And if your answer is yes, then I would request you all to go back to 2010, almost a decade back, and look at a particular aspect where an organization was awarded a safety performance award on 20th of April. And the reason why they were awarded was because they had close to like 7 years without any lost time injuries. And almost like it was at 13:15 during the lunch break, while the BP and the Transocean officials, they kind of handed over this award to the Rick's crew. And less than 9 hours of that particular award ceremony, the entire rig went down the ocean. So, I mean, there was an explosion which was followed by fire, and the entire rig went down an ocean. Now, having said that, like most of the organization across the world were intrigued by the fact that an organization like BP, which has got like 7 years of at a stretch without lost time injuries record, how can this happen? So the first and the foremost thing that came up to the top leadership's mind of most of such high hazard organizations were, are we monitoring the right KPIs? Are we monitoring the right performances indicators? So with that, let me not take away the thrill from you right away. So isn't that a beautiful picture, first of all? A perfect mirror image. And I just love this picture. However, like, believe me, in safety, there is no such perfect mirror image. And why I say this, because if we are kind of analyzing our organization safety performance with the safety triangle, which is the occupational safety triangle, or someone calls it a personal safety triangle, then it may not be the same case. Like, if I were to ask you if this were the perfect mirror image, you would say yes. But if we go further down, there is a very slight correlation, a correlation wherein the human interfaces with the machines or with the asset or with the particular hazardous facility. So that's the only correlation you have between these two triangles. And as we move further, there is absolutely no correlations. And you would definitely agree to it that the triangles on both the sides of your screen are leads us to different decisions, and the management, the CEOs, they infer respective data, they infer from respective data sets of each of these two triangles, and then they make a business decisions so as to control the high hazards risk. Now, if we were to compare the occupational safety with the process safety and tell us that the organization is performing in a particular fashion, we need to fetch out data from each of the triangles. Now, there is a word of caution here, like when I say this. For a process safety, the layer, the minor loss of containment or the loss of containment needs to be customized. There is a threshold limit which needs to be defined by the facility itself. That's the reason I say, like, in safety or in safety management system, there are hardly any mirror images. So a minor loss of containment, which has been the threshold of which has been defined by your organization or by your facility, may not be the same for someone else. So you need to define them. However, for the last time, we have a standard formula, we have a standard definitions. So everything goes for most of the organization in the same way. Now you would wonder, what are these? So I would explain you this in a while I take you forward. The next thing that we need to look upon is the safety performance monitoring. So we have to get those data, as I mentioned earlier, we have to get those data set from each of these two triangles and then arrive at a decision whether we are performing the way we should perform. So hence, from this place or this slide onwards, I would particularly concentrate on the process safety triangle. As you can see, like even in process safety triangle, there is lagging indicators and there is leading indicators. So To most of the business directors or the CEOs, they refer to the process safety model if they are supposed to take care or control or improve upon the major hazard risk. Now, those business decision comes particularly from this model, and the CEOs look at it in a different way. Now, the question comes that whether all the CEOs follows this. Now, the CEOs can have, or the CEO or the business directors can have their own KPIs like this. Just for the sake of laugh, and but it it does question a lot. Like if you have this as your KPI, then definitely the organization falls in the fourth quadrant of the top left, which is they have imminent danger of annihilation. So do the directors and the CEO have the right information, which by means of which they can enable them to make the business decisions and to improve upon or to control the high hazard risk? Now, we try to demystify this complex issue uh, of defining what a KPI means to the CEOs. Are they really looking at and do they really understand this? So we selected a group of business directors and CEOs, to a very precise 43 of them, and we kind of developed a questionnaire, which there were just 11 questions in them. However, when we got the survey response, we were quite intrigued by three questions. The one which are encircled in yellow on the left side of the screen. So I'll start with question number 8, the top one on the left side of the screen, which has been encircled. If you see the response, 36% said no. Now, what was the question? The question was, are you certain that the information KPIs provide leads directly to change in the way you manage risk? And they said, no. So, all right, we said, perfect. They are saying no, that means they are not getting some kind of inferences from this KPIs. So we need to change the KPIs. Coming back to this next question, which is question number 7, where we asked, do you understand what the change in the status of each measure means for the control of risk? They said, yes, we do understand that. Now, that was quite a misinterpretation of both these responses, the responses which we captured in the previous one and the next one. And then comes the one which was very hard hitting. Do you over measure because you find it difficult to identify the main areas of vulnerability within your organization? And they say, yes, we do over measure. And because we find it very difficult, we don't have a concrete set of picture or a data which can reflect upon that this is our area of vulnerability and we need to work upon that. Now, these questions were kind of an eye-opener for us. And then we kind of said, let's have a specific process safety management performance monitoring KPIs. Now, in order to understand or in order to make some of our leadership team understand why this KPI is required when we already have a KPI on the occupational safety, we kind of collated on 4 points, major points. The first is avoiding complacency. Like we understand that I just took a quote from the Baker's panel report of Baby Texas refinery incident. And they say that the passing of the time without a process incident is not necessarily an indication that all is well and may contribute to a dangerous and growing sense of complacency. Now, if you look at mostly or the major incidences across the globe, process incidences across the globe were the resultant of this. We don't have, I mean, as I started, we don't have any incident. We have like over the over the period of 7 years, we didn't had a lost time injury. So that was a kind of a sense like that of complacency that got developed among the directors and the CEOs, that we are all good. We don't have to worry about anything. And then finally, everything goes under the ocean. The second was like improving the reliability. Now, everyone understands the financial numbers very well. So making operation reliable is something that, I mean, without any business interruption, is something that everyone understands makes sense. And any asset failure, which may lead to any kind of opportunity lost, that is something, a reason for worry. So they got this understanding. Then preventing major incident. I mean, it happened at a time when things were not quite well across the globe. I'll tell an example of a particular major incident which kind of like was in the news for a few days during the pandemic. People were, on the other hand, were under lockdown, and the other hand, like we had a huge incident. If you all remember the warehouse explosion incident at Beirut, Lebanon, there were a lot of videos which showed like how glasses were shattered, how buildings were, I mean, torn apart, like by that explosion, by the 2,500 tons of ammonium nitride, which was stored in a warehouse with incompatible materials. So we said that, like, even though you don't have a process hazard or a process risk, you may have certain things which you may have bypassed that. So you should start looking at them, because they kind of build upon the organizational reputation, and and it boils down to the financial stability. And then communicating performance, like we all are hearing the buzzword of ESG. So we came up like the social part of the ESG, you need to take care of. And if you want to make your stakeholders and your investors kind of satisfied, you need to communicate the performance. You need to reassure your focus. You need to be transparent, and you need to show them that we are advancing steadily, not only on the occupational safety front, but also on the process safety culture. So with that understanding, we took an approach, which is established approach in the oil and gas industry, with the chemical industry, of food, which is the food tire approach, which kind of defines what exactly is your lagging and the leading indicators. So we all know what are the lagging indicators, which are defined in in the tier 1 and the tier 2. Which are the major, or the less severe incidences and loss of primary containment. However, most organizations, including ours, didn't had a leading indicator on process safety. So these are the ones which are specific to organizational management systems, specific to an activity or an individual asset or plant. Particularly tier 3, these are used to monitor the performance of our different barriers, which kind of control the hazard from traveling to the target. The target can be a human, the target can be multiple humans, the target can be the environment, the target can be the community at large, so, and the overall asset's health. And then the tier 4, which are used to monitor the operating discipline and performance of the management system elements, which are the key to the performance of process safety. Now, you all love cheese. I mean, this model has been shown many a times and interpreted in a very different way. But believe me, the Swiss cheese, as we all know, the Swiss cheese model has a different story. I kind of understood it quite lately. It was in 2020 that I was traveling and one of my friends, a very good friend of mine, explained me the Swiss cheese holes. Now, why I'm definitely not going to like explain you how a Swiss cheese is made, but I'm going to like build upon the holes in that Swiss cheese. Like he said, Anshuman, like the Swiss cheese tastes best when there are small holes. But as the cheese, it ages, the holes become big. When you cut a slice of it, you would find bigger holes as compared to the one which has been like cut fresh. And as the cheese age, the holes become big. Now that's a correlation which I kind of drew from the Swiss cheese model, which Professor James Reason kind of like developed and built upon further. So if you see like the hazards in a Swiss cheese model, yeah, sorry. So the hazards, this is a hazard, right? They are contained by multiple barriers. There are multiple barriers before it reaches the target and causes a huge consequence to the organization. It can be the reputation mm, or overall business stoppage, whatever you can see. Now, these barriers, as in the Swiss cheese, has got holes. These holes become big, and once they become big, it is easy for the hazard to get aligned, and that particular energy can travel and cause not only a loss of primary containment, but it can escalate further and lead to a major incident if these barriers also has a hole in them and they are all aligned. Now, the barriers are particularly engineered containment, and also in some cases in processes they are behavioral controlled, which are dependent on people. And the holes, as I mentioned, these are latent, incipient, and they can be like opened up by the behavior of the operating personnel. Now, when I say this, the tier 3 and the tier 4 are this part of your barriers, the preventive barriers. Now, these are your leading indicators. So let me cite an example here. Like way back in 1966, if I'm not wrong, like it was in Fez in France. I read this in the book, What Went Wrong. So like it said, like a particular operator, in order to drain the aqueous stuff from a propane hot sphere, those round spears, I mean the spears for propane, they were supposed to drain it out. So on a particular morning, the operator opened a valve. This valve was supposed to be open in a modulating way, like 5%, 10%, 15% kind of. Now, when that operator opened, unlike the other days, the residuals didn't like get drained. So in order to like ensure that it get drained, he opened it a bit abrupt to 20-25%. And there was some kind of blockages, maybe an ice, which was kind of investigated and concluded upon. And then the propane started leaking. Now, when I say this, the first barrier was the operating discipline. He was supposed to open it 5%, 10%, 15%. He was not supposed to open that even if there was a blockage. Now, people become complacent. They believe that everything is okay. I mean, and nothing can go wrong because there are other barriers to take care of, or there are other systems, physical engineered systems to take care of. In this case, they didn't happen. What happened was it directly resulted in loss of containment because the other valve which he tried to open a bit, that also started draining out the propane. And propane, like it's a cryogenic in that particular state, so it froze the valves it froze the valve, and then you cannot stop it, and you cannot close that valve. They tried, but they cannot close, and the propane started leaking. This is what we call as the loss of primary containment. And then what did they do? Then, I mean, this particular part, which is called as the lagging indicators. Now, here, if there is a loss of primary containment, we have certain kind of emergency measures. We have certain kind of other controls, a mitigating control, what we see as. Here, they tried to like stop the traffic, everything. But by then, the vapor cloud had traveled to a particular vehicle which was on a start mode. And it was just 160 meters from that, and there was a huge explosion. And following which, the entire tank farm, there were a lot of other tanks containing different flammable and explosive fluid that all went up in flames. So why I had shown you this is to make you understand like what leading indicators can do to our performance monitoring, and what the lagging indicators that we already do can help us to strengthen certain systems. Now, this is where I mentioned like the hazard travels towards the target and then leads to a consequence. Now, when it is traveling towards a target, if there is just a single failure, you can still control it. So these are usually the unsafe behavior or the insufficient operating discipline among the personnel, among the process personnel, which may lead to a tier 4 event. However, if there are two layers which fails, it is what we call, but it still does not let go and reach the target. We call it as a near miss. That is your system failures. And above that are all your category, or what we call as tier 1 and tier 2 events. Like all the barriers fail, they reach the target, but there are certain kind of barriers, the escalation barriers, which gets activated, and still the consequences can be lessened, if not like entirely like tackled with, but the consequences can be lessened. But in some cases, as I mentioned about the Beirut explosion, or like LG Polymer in Vizag, where like 12 lives were lost and 1,000 people got injured on May 2020, that's like all barriers failed. And that led to a huge UN cry in the media, as well as within the particular city. The plant was closed down, and there were a lot of compensations which the Indian government imposed on that particular Korean partner. Now, I'll explain this, the leading and the lagging, with another case study. Like this is from a particular industry of ours, like I won't name it, but this is where the this is the chemical agent destruction plant. And the hazard here is if the chemical agent, these chemical agents are those agents which are used in the warfares. Sorry, I didn't mention that. These are usually used in the warfares. So if there is a premature release of content from the agent's neutralizing system, this is what I call as the neutralizing system of that particular agent. Before complete neutralization, you have an issue. The potential release can be caused by incorrect sequencing of the neutralizing steps. First, that's the primary cause. The secondary can be, as I mentioned, the operating discipline. And when I say operating discipline, it kind of still relates to incorrect sequencing of the neutralizing steps. Now, the leading indicators which I explained earlier as your tier 3 and the tier 4 are the calibration records of certain equipments, particularly which are used for analyzing. Then the performance deviations, or if there is a drift in the calibration, because these are very accurate or highly precise equipments. Even a calibration failure of 0.05 may lead to the premature release of the content to the next stage before they are completely neutralized. And the consequences are like multiple fatalities can happen within that. And if it goes beyond, the community can get impacted. The other like leading indicator is the maintenance record, which are usually associated with the reactor. And this is the like agent neutralizing reactor, which has got an agitator. The agitator is one of the vital components, which we call as also the PSM critical equipment. Because if there is a change in vibration or if there is a change in current, this may not function as per the design intent. And that's where, again, the premature release of content of the neutralizing agent may happen. And the operating discipline, we need to check whether the trainings have been validated, whether we have done a job cycle check for all the operators who are involved in this particular operations. And then coming to the lagging indicators, the record of your near misses, some kind of near miss event. What we mean by a near miss event in a process incident. So if a particular sensor is supposed to pick up a data when a level crosses a mark, when I say mark, that means if the level crosses from 90 to 91, it should immediately pick up that and relay to that control loop. But if it doesn't do it and does that at 91.5, we call this as a near miss event. And we categorize them as a process safety event. Now, as an example here, the premature opening of the valve or the faulty instrument or the failure of the caustic valve to open, these are all what we call as the lagging indicators. So won't spend time on, that particular case study much. Let me take you to the 6-step approach, which we kind of used for selecting and our review of the KPIs. The selection of the KPIs was essential as I mentioned, that 3 questions were kind of worrying for us. Like our senior leadership feels like they have too many things to look at to arrive at a decisions. They have like something which they kind of understands, but that does not help them to take the business decisions. So we said, let's keep a 6-step approach. And of course, the first and the foremost is around ensuring the management's ownership and establish the implementation team, wherein we have an agreement on certain action and continuous improvement. I won't take much time, but the second one, which is around the tier 2 and the tier 1 and the tier 2 KPIs to assess the company's performance. Here, we kind of spend much time to measure the baseline data on industry-wise. Like if we were comparing a chloralkali with chloralkali or epoxy with an epoxy or a carbon black with a carbon black. So we wanted to understand like where does that industry's performance is and where we are at this point, like when we started off. Whether the data that we have as on does it facilitate a good trending and benchmarking with the industry. Now, that was our concern. The next one, what we did was we kind of started analyzing our integrity barriers and critical processes to prevent major incident on a 3-dimensional aspect. On a proactive, which is like identification of the controls through the PHs, and then like the external ones, which are like industry-wide learning, why the barrier failed, or like what are the like risk control measures that they're in place, what is the recognized and generally accepted good engineering practice to ensure that the barrier doesn't fail. So these are something that we did on the external aspect. And on the reactive aspect, where we had too much of a data available, particularly when I say too much of a data available, those were all your tier one and the tier two data which were available in step two. So we kind of identified which are our weak barriers from the asset integrity incidences or the high potential event. In our case, it was more from the high potential events that we identified those critical barriers. Then we wanted to select the KPIs for tier three and the tier four. So we have to develop the performance data of our critical barriers, which came from again the step number three, and we then asked each of the facility of various businesses of ours to tailor it and evolve to a particular level where they can identify the strengths and the weaknesses using a particular threshold which they can kind of consider as per their risk matrix. So that was the identification process for the tier 3 and the tier 4. The fifth step was to ensure that we have the right data, the right quality of data, uh, which we can use to analyze the performance and then use that to improve our actions, particularly the decision-making process. And the sixth step was how often this review mechanism should be, and how regular we need to ensure that the process safety barriers and tier 3 and the tier 4 KPIs add on to our performance improvement through dual inspection approach. However, we still had a concern. The concern was in step 5, wherein the data was of concern. The quality of data was of concern because when we defined the process safety event monitoring and reporting mechanism, each of the businesses across the group had a different set of standards. So we started working this at step 1 for us, and it then led us towards the path of kind of to develop a roadmap for implementation of our analytical model for PSM. And that was the first step towards the big data analytics. Now, as I mentioned, the issue was, do we have the adequate and the sufficient data assets? So any governance mechanism, a good governance mechanism comes from the quality of the data. Organizing the data, understanding them, and then developing and acquiring the data. The second step was, how are we interpreting those data? Are we interpreting them in the right way? Are we summarizing the standard reports that are used in the decision making? The third was, does the data help us to identify the cause effect relationship? That is identification of the causal drivers and their effects. So what are the causal drivers and what can be the effect? Now, this is where the main analytics would, start featuring around. And then the fourth step, does the data help us to provide action insights? Can we take certain decisions based on this particular data? And the last but not the least, which kind of was way ahead of the time, there was a question which said, the data, can they tell us what are the effects of our future decisions? Now, that was something which kind of called for our entire analytical model to be implemented in a phase-wise way. So this is an analytical model which most of you must be aware of. So we said perfect. Let's start working on phase 0, which was mostly around the data. How can we enrich those data assets which can feed into the the raw data, and we start interpreting them in a way so that it can further feed into the algorithms, and we can train those algorithms which are our causal drivers and their effect. As I said, the cause-effect relationship. And then does the data help us to provide action insight? And does the data quantify the effect of our future decisions? Now, when we talk about future decisions, it is something prescriptive. The model should suggest us that this is something what you need to do, because if this happens, this can be something which can happen, and this can be stopped if you take these decisions or a set of decisions. So as on, we are kind of at phase 2, where we are training our algorithms with the current set of data, the raw data, and trying to establish the causal drivers and its effect. So this is our, as I mentioned, this is the decision support to the decision guidance model. We started with basic reporting. The basic reporting, like what happened, then how many times, how often. These are something we were monitoring earlier too, but then we said, let's put this dynamic, the problems or the reporting data into action. And that's start with the basic analytics and then go to the advanced analytics, where we can see, like, what if this trends continue? What will happen next? What is the best decision that I can take, or the CEO or the business directors can take in order to control the major hazard risk? So the big data analytics, let me talk about the model that are used. Like, we have varied set of data which are captured from the SAP PM, which are captured from the ICM, which are captured from the online permitting system, from the management of change, from the instrumentation, from the distributed control systems. They all feed into the scenarios and the modeling, which then starts training the algorithm of the advanced analytic model. Now, they kind of communicate or interface with the model for feedback process, which again comes from your process control loops, from your barrier health management system for your incidences in Kpis system, from the asset integrity and its management programs and the management system, I would say, the competency and the training of the personnel who are involved in that process, and of course, the assurance process, that's audit and the reporting. Now, they all interact with each other, and there are two feedbacks which gets like segregated. One is for the modeling the scenarios, and the other is for analytic progressions. So this is the core model that we used. Now, the working models are like, I won't say it's completely implemented. So we have some real-time tracking. With this real-time tracking, let's suppose a person reaches a particular zone, and it is found that that particular person is not trained on a particular job. It sends an immediate alert to the safety monitoring center, which in turn sends a notification to that person's supervisor or reporting manager, so that the person can be stopped from further progress, or cannot be given access to that particular area. So this data, this leading data, gets fed into our central repository. We have a central repository, and there are like safety incidents data, there are operational logs, there are leading data on observations and unsafe condition or at-risk behaviors, which again feeds into your integrated system. And we kind of get a trend, like what exactly are our lagging stuff. And then it feeds into our model, which gives us certain insight, which is going to give us certain insight. Let me correct myself, because this is not completely implemented as of. It can also like predict and give us proactive decisions that this is the best thing that we can do with this particular data or model. The next is the real-time barrier health and LOPC. This is something that we have started working on. We have started training that algorithm on. So we capture these are our preventive barriers. We capture the real-time data. So for that, what we have done is we have tagged our critical equipment, the PSM critical equipment, with their respective integrity operating windows and safe operating limits and top risk scenarios. We kind of get for an overpressure system, we get those real-time feedbacks, and then we kind of get a loss of primary containment prediction from those data. And that's how this model, we are planning to use it particularly for particularly for the real-time barrier health and LOPC predictions, and then develop certain KPIs around them, and then help the business directors and the CEO to arrive at a particular decision. We have almost reached the time limit that's been allotted to me. So let me summarize my thought. First and foremost, data is the asset in PSM. We cannot ignore any kind of data. When you start with that end in mind. Have a very clear written problem statement, which should be aligned with your process safety performance goals. Once that's been done, you focus on the top risk of that facility, of that particular asset in your organization, and start leveraging whatever data you have. That may reside in your central repositories, that may reside in some of your logs. Wherever you have to start leveraging those data. Believe me, the in-data analytics, it can become somewhat overwhelming if the top risk and existing systems are not considered. We sometimes used to get bogged down by the kind of data and a reiteration of them, every time there was a change in the algorithm by our data analytics team. So use all kind of data, try and compile each and every set of data. The problem that data can solve. So problem formulation, as we defined our survey questions and the other questions, why we should require a KPI and how we should approach at the KPI, those problem formulation questions and data requirement should be there. It should be user-centered approach. You need to understand the need of the corporate guy, right from your business directors, your CEOs, your vice presidents of operations to the line managers. You should consider each and every one's requirement. And then you develop that framework, set certain priorities for the evaluation. Data preparation is critical. So leverage automation tools for real-time data, as I mentioned, like your SPs, your DCS systems, your MOS systems, your e-permitting system. Use everything that you have in place. That kind of feeds into your real-time data repositories. And be iterative and agile. So there can be repetitions. So analytic projects are like small step of repetitions, and they are very tightly scoped data sets and hypotheses. So with that, I conclude my presentation, my talk. Thank you so much. Open to questions, please.
Thank you so much, sir, for the nice presentation. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Shauvik Das and Mr. Ashish Garg for the question answer session. Over to you both.
Thank you, sir. The lecture was very informative and very interesting. You have brought leading and lagging indicator. Then you have linked them with that Swiss cheese model and the application of business big data analytics. So the talk was, sir, very interesting, sir. Now, sir, we can see that there are so many question and answers in the chat box. I am taking few of them, sir. So I
Sure.
am taking, yes, sir. So the first question is, what are the lead indicators and lag indicators of an industry while quantifying safety culture? Yes, sir.
So I'll talk about the process safety culture, right? So when we talk about the process safety culture, like as I mentioned, the leading indicators are like specific to the activities, the individual assets which are performing in your organization or within your facility, and the overall plant and facility is something that you have to take care of. But when the tier three or like the indicators for the cultural aspects come from your discipline, the operating discipline, I mean, and the performance management system. So when I talk about performance management system, the first and the foremost is how the training aspects. We start from the training, the awareness levels. It then goes up to individual, like how they are, like the job cycle check I mentioned. These are like something that we use even for our occupational safety aspects. And then it further progresses down on the overall operating procedures. So these are some of the indicators on the on the process cultures aspect that one has to see.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now the second seeing after starting the working model that you have explained in process safety management.
Uh, First of all, when I talk about the working model, there are certain real-time data that we are capturing. Those were never captured earlier. Now, when they are captured, whatever form it is, like even if we don't apply the algorithms, we just fetch the raw data, they give you a picture. They give you a picture that this particular asset, okay, let me give an example on this. Like in one of our facility, a breathing valve, like which is installed particularly when the pressure goes up, uh, it has to function. But this particular bleeding valve, when I went to that particular site following an incident, and it was constantly popping up. And like I asked someone, like, why this bleeding valve is constant? Is it as per the design intent? They said no. This was not as per the design intent. They searched through a lot of data and they said no, this is not as per the design intent. Now the point is they should have fixed up their process parameters deviation, which is leading to frequent pressure increase in the system. That's not been taken care of. All right. So these are some of the benefits that we are witnessing when I talk about the working model. Because as I mentioned, we are still not yet like getting certain insights from the algorithm. We are now training that algorithm so that getting data from the lagging as well as the leading indicators can enable us to get certain insights and the senior leadership certain insights on them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. With your permission, I am taking the last question. Then
Yes,
we will have the open question answer session, sir. So the
okay.
last question is, sir, if we have safety data in the form of audits and inspection observation, then how can we use analytics in identifying these leading indicators?
And that's a very good question. Let me tell you, like our assurance team does a lot of like site audits, and we have captured a lot of informations from our central repository from those audits. Uh, Something like the particular asset was designed in a particular way, and while it was been running over a period of time, over a life cycle of that particular, they have changed certain things. Now those changes were not categorically captured in any of the repository because maybe that particular site or the particular facility didn't have the management of change module in place, so they haven't captured that. So we started capturing those data from our audit and the assurance program. Like these data kind of tell us that these gaps can lead you to certain operating disciplines. So I believe I've answered that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I would like to hand over the session to Sanjana.
Yes, thank you, Shobik. So now we would like to invite Professor Obi Krishna sir to provide the vote of thanks to our expert speaker. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Sir, you are muted.
I'm telling there are experts in safety available in this team.
Yes, sir. I have allowed all of them to unmute.
Professor Uday Kumar, would you like to ask anything? Professor?
No, thanks. Just I would like to say it was really very interesting to listen to Mr. Ghosh. And I can tell you, I have worked with this indicator for almost 10 years in the oil and gas industry when I was in Norway. In fact, we led a very huge program at that time, 30 million crowns, developing these Kpis and for leading and lagging indicators. One thing we came, because it's just interesting for you maybe, we're trying to separate, as you have done it exactly, Swiss cheese model and all. Finally, we found what is lead indicator and what is lagging indicators. We found sometimes they are the same number. It becomes for the top management leading indicators, whereas for the lower, it's a lagging indicators. And one example I always cite when I was teaching, now I don't teach for last 15 years, like a car. If people are buying a lot of cars in a country, what happens, the car manufacturers, the shop, the people who are selling, it becomes a profit and it becomes a lagging indicator. But central banks becomes a leading indicator for them. They increase the interest rate. They say, oh, people have a lot of money. Inflation will come. So increase. So sometimes, actually, your example was very interesting for me. Sometimes the same number, like auditing done, auditors find faults. For account department, it becomes a lagging indicators. For management, it becomes a lead indicators that we should not land up in trouble with government. So it's a very tricky issues. But you separated very nicely these lagging indicators. It happened and it escalated into the major events. So thanks a lot. And I enjoyed it listening to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that's a very interesting analogy which you cited for the cars. Thanks so much.
Okay. Knowing you, Anushman, right from Tata Steel days, I really appreciate the way you have presented the whole topic. First of all, the Swiss cheese model, the slice decaying as the age, with the age, is a very good concept you have said. Good, it is true. The preventive measures will get deteriorated as the time goes. So you put it in very nice way that. And I don't have any doubt to say you put data analytics in a very practical way without using the terminology of the data analytics what the academicians use. You have put the very in a clear terms to the people. You have explained the total data analytics methodology, the models in such a way the industry people can understand very well. Good. I appreciate that. And finally, let me appreciate Aditya Birla Group. From the presentation which you have made, I get a feeling the whole organization of Aditya Birla Group is heading towards good data analytics. I hope in the near future, definitely you will see very good results. You have not mentioned the results which you are seeing. You will not feel very quickly. You'll get slowly. And Aditya Birla Group also should get into how to use these Industry 4.0 IoTs for getting the data. That's the most reliable data nowadays. From COE we are propagating. Use IoTs for getting the industrial data. Good, Anspan. We'll be in touch with you. You'll be now partner of COE. And also, as I said, the present paper in our conference on this, the same subject. It's a very interesting subject. uh, speak in the big gathering. This is what I want to tell all the people. See, COE is involved in the conference. What Sinjana has mentioned, it's an opportunity for you to submit the abstract, and finally we will help you. We'll help you if in the process of making your presentations if required. And finally, it's an opportunity for you to expose yourself to the whole world. So I wish good number of papers coming from you and expose yourself. Finally, it will be publications. So thank you,
Hello.
audience.
Good evening,
Yeah,
sir. Hello. Hello.
yeah. Who is there?
Good evening, sir. So, which side hustle we should start while pursuing BTech in fire safety that helps in this field? Hello.
You're
I think
asking any question?
Professor Maiti can answer this question.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Actually, he is asking about the BTech in fire safety engineering something.
So, which side hustle we should start while pursuing in BTech?
Which?
again.
Okay. No. I could not get your question.
So, I leave in the chat. Let me.
Okay, you leave in the chat. Fine.
I think he is asking that where he can pursue BTech fire safety. I think Nagpur fire engineering, they have a good branch. We can think for fire specific to fire engineering, or I think Trichy
Sir,
University.
hello. Hello.
Yes.
Sir,
Hello.
what are the other skills that we learn from outside that will help in this field?
I mean,
Okay.
you are
Outside,
you want to
you want to
pursue
you will
academic
get the fire
field?
engineering these things.
No, I think okay. You are
Yeah.
are you listening? We can talk every week. We are discussing something related to safety engineering. Whether you are working doing BTech in fire safety engineering or fire engineering, but all are important. So find out. And there is basically YouTube also. All the talks are available in YouTube. And we have several YouTube courses also, online courses. So and there are lot many institutes. If you Google, you will find out. And there are a lot many journals, particularly in the areas of safety engineering and engineering, fire safety. You have to explore all those things. In one word, we cannot answer this. This is a very interesting but yet difficult question.
Okay.
I have
thank
one question.
Yeah, come on.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Very
I think
interesting.
it was a very good presentation by Mr. Anshuman Ghosh, and I came across, he presented one slide where he mentioned that if a worker perform a job and he's not well enough trained or skilled, then some information goes to supervisor or something. Am I correct?
Yes, that was the working model. That's how we kind of use the real-time data of that person. Like there are a lot of variables, IoTs, particularly we are using a lot of computer vision and geosensing devices in our plants, in different facilities of ABG, and that's how we track them.
I will introduce the who asked the question. He's Rupesh. He's a head of HSE in IBB Hitachi. He's driving car. He called me. I have forwarded your link to him.
Okay.
He was listening. He's in Stockholm, some area. Must be driving. That's it.
Yeah,
Rupesh. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I should have introduced myself, but I thought time. So okay, so if there are some IoTs and sensors are around the worker, and then they detect the activities, and based on that, it gives the information. Am I right?
So like each and every worker, the workman does wear a QR code on their jackets or on their shirts or overalls. So they get recognized by that, by the computer and by the cameras that we have. And then they immediately translate that whether that there is a geofencing across that area and whether he is or she is authorized to be in that particular area for any kind of an activity. And then they immediately match up with the records in the database, whether they have been trained on that particular site or for any of the activities in that particular site. If not, they create an alert. The monitoring station, they generate an alert, notifies the supervisors, and immediately they have been stopped by means of an alarm, by means of some person going there. And that also gets added into the database. And that helps us to kind of provide insight that these are the number of breaches of person moving into a particular site where they shouldn't be, and how you can strengthen them, because you have certain hazards and those risks are very high if a person, if an unauthorized person enters a particular area, operates a particular equipment. So that is how we do it.
Perfect, very good. And the last question, is it okay that if I can contact you later just to get more light on it?
Yeah, sure. Anytime.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Anshuman. Thank you. I thank all the participants for your very active question and answer session. That's very, very important. That's one of our objectives from COE also. And the moderators, today we have a new moderator, Sinjana. Sinjana, you did very well. And Savik, Ashish, and one of the very active ladies not there, Mom Mitra. Otherwise, she's also good. I thank her also. And finally, the IITs for giving this platform, presenting this, and Aditya Birla Group for sparing Anshuman Ghosh, for sparing their experiences. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all the faculty members of IIT, and it's indeed a pleasure, to speak on this platform and to interact with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.